Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review, and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today, I'm having a full spoiler discussion of Book 4 of The Wheel of Time, The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, with my good friend Matt.
Hello, Sam. How are you?
We've just had this conversation offline. We're both great, but tired.
Yeah, that's great but tired. That's the good description. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And looking forward to talking about this book, definitely.
Yeah. So, for those of you that have just found this video for the first time, you don't know who any of us are. Me and Matt have been reading a book a month of The Wheel of Time, and then once we've both read it and both kind of caught up to each other, we have been trying in vain to schedule a podcast style full spoiler discussion where we kind of go through and chat what's going on in the book and how we thought about it and our favourite moments. I think
Yeah, this this
Matt.
is this is Sam being very polite. What he means is he finishes the book in the month and then has to wait for me to catch up and finish it so we can actually have the discussion. That's what he actually means, but he's very polite to say it.
Well, I think that the benefit on this one is that I think I finished it like very shortly before you did, because you
Yeah.
finished like 2 weeks ago, like right at the beginning of May,
Uh, yeah, probably, yeah, but yeah, well, yeah, sort of, yeah, just over 10 days ago, I think it was probably, yeah.
and I finished, um, if not the last day of April, like very
Okay.
close before. Because in April I went on two stag do's, and you'd be
I
surprised how little reading you get done
I
on a
wouldn't.
stag do. Although I did read a few chapters, so that was fun.
Okay.
Um, so why don't we start with our general feelings on this one? I'll let you go first.
Okay, so as you know, Sam, each book, first book of the Wheel of Time, I was pretty middle of the road. It was okay. Wasn't that impressed. And the second book was a bit better. Third book was better, and this book was even better. This book was the best of the four so far. It was superb. It was absolutely just brilliant. One of the best books I've read in a while.
Mm,
And it just made me so happy that I've continued progressing. So after the first couple, I was like, nah, it's all right, but it's not really grabbing me. But the next two, and this one especially, have just been incredible. And it's just, I mean, this is a proper chunky book. I think this is the longest one of the series,
yeah, it is.
and it is big, and there's a huge amount that happens. I was sort of going back because it has been like 10 days since I finished it. I was going back and just going through, trying to remember all the things that have happened. I was thinking, wow, a lot happened in this book.
Mm,
But for me, it was paced really well. Um, Even though there's a lot of information, there's a lot of information given to us, but it was given to us in interesting ways and things that were sort of hinted at earlier. We started to get more development of the world and the people and
mm,
cultures within that, which has been absolutely fascinating. And then just the ending or endings of this book, because we have for the first time we have sort of more than one tight ending. We have sort of multiple characters in multiple places having their own climactic conclusion to the story or this element of the story was just brilliant. And there were so many great moments that I was just finishing a chapter and just like going, yes, this is amazing. So this is superb. This is my favorite, I think, by far.
mm.
I have, yeah, I could, I think we're going to be sort of gushing about this for the next however long we talk about it. I've got a couple of very, because I'm a pedant, as you know, very minor things, but nothing takes away from this book. It was superb. I don't know how did you feel, Sam, after I've
Basically the
happily gone over
same.
it?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I definitely. I was like when I finished reading it, I was like, did I love that as much as the Dragon Reborn? I think that the map chapters for me in the Dragon Reborn were so away and beyond good that I was missing him a little bit in the Shadow Rising because he kind of takes a
yeah,
back seat.
he does. Yeah, yeah,
But I think there's no. We're talking about like two five-star books from my point of view. I feel like The Dragon Reborn was excellent, 5 stars, and then The Shadow Rising was excellent, 5 stars. And this, I feel like every single book past book one has been about like making me like characters. So in like The Great Hunt, I finally got behind Rand and was like, yeah, Rand's my boy. I like this character. I'm invested in where he's going. And then The Dragon Reborn was all about Matt. And then this one feels like it's been the one to finally get me interested in Perrin. Um, and like, I liked Perrin in all the books, but I was like, I don't see why people would love Perrin in the same way that they love Matt or Rand. I
Yeah.
was like, he's just kind of the third one. And like the one in, the Ninja Turtle that no one's all that bothered about. That's no one's favorite. But it,
This is definitely the Perrin book. Yeah, absolutely. This is
yeah.
awesome for him.
So I've got the Wikipedia up here.
Yeah. Okay.
So who would you bet is the number one percentage POV? Who's your guess?
I would. Oh, it's going to be Perrin or Rand. I'm going to go for Perrin. Just.
Yeah. So it's not even just. It's by like
Oh.
7%. So
Okay.
he's got
Okay.
28% of the page time,
Yeah.
and Rand has 21%. But and here's
Okay.
the interesting one, which I did not guess at all,
20%.
is that Elaine is the third most screen timed POV with 14%. And
Really?
everyone else is around, all the other main characters are around 5 to 10. But
Okay.
Elaine manages to pip everyone to the post. And I think Elaine also was one
Mm.
that I kind of liked but didn't know anything about in the previous books. And now, what in Shadow Rising, I was like, oh, Elaine's great. I'm genuinely interested in what's going on with her and like
Yeah.
invested. So yeah, I think I've talked before in the intro that this is going to be full spoilers, but we haven't really spoiled anything yet. We've just said what we think, and I think we both think it's great. But I think from here on, we're going to go all in and full of spoilers. So if you were watching the beginning of this going, oh, I wonder what this book's about, now is time to turn off. And I hope that talking for that long of a period of time about how we're going to start spoiling it has given you time to turn it off if you're listening in the car. Anyway, so I think that, yeah, should we talk about Perrin's stuff first?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go for Perrin.
Um,
Yeah. So I just. Oh, so good. Like, so this is interesting because obviously we had a discussion about Perrin in the last video with Ross, and I know we had because I know Ross wasn't too keen on Perrin
mm,
in the previous book, and I kind of liked Perrin in the previous book because he was a bit different
yeah,
from the others. Like he had his own conclusion in the others. All three books have all led, previous two books have all led to one grand finale,
mm,
which is basically Rand fighting a baddie, the
round
same baddie
finale.
over and over again. Rand versus Bolzamon or
Mm,
Ishmael, wherever at the end of each one, with the group around him supporting him in some way. And in the last book, Perrin had his moment where he was separate from that. He was still there-ish, but he was doing his own thing. He was going after Fail
mm,
rather than sort of fighting the bigger battle. And then this book, that's expanded even further, and he's able to break away, in a sense, from Rand, which Matt,
mm,
and we'll come on to Matt, I'm sure, in a bit, isn't able to do,
yeah,
because the way the wheel weaves. And Perrin going back to Emond's Field, and the fact that we've come home quite early in the series. I know it's quite long into what we've been reading. We're deep into the fourth chunky book, but
mm,
it's still quite early. We've come back home, and to see how Emmons feels the same but changed. We've got the White Cloaks, we've got Trollocs, we've got disaster and destruction and despair, and to see how much Perrin has changed
mm,
from the boy who left Emmons Field to the man or the Lord who has returned, was fascinating. And just that whole element and like his his climax to his story in this book
Mm,
is just brilliant, and it's the first real sort of detailed pitch
definitely.
battle we have in Jordan, and he does it so well. I was so engaged in what was going on, and I know it's not a massive battle per se, but it was big in the context of the story. It was big in the character development, and it just hit home so well. And Perrin was so good in that, and like this
Mm,
unlikely hero who didn't want to be a leader, but has taken on that role, and everyone now looks to him. And it's just his development was superb, absolutely superb. And I've waffled on long enough, Sam. I'll let you have your couple of minutes.
yeah, I will echo the thing that I really liked, which was going back to the Two Rivers. Um, I think that we were left a few clues in the Two Rivers in the very beginning with like Tam and his heron marked sword, and that there was something going on with Tam, and that there was maybe something going on in the Two Rivers, and that that there's a reason why maybe all these Tavaran come from there, and it's because of the old blood of Manetherin and the stubbornness and all this sort of stuff. And I think that there's a lot of really interesting stuff left behind. And with most fantasy books, you come to the return in like the final book in the epilogue, like, but we're not getting we're getting that epilogue in book 4 of 15 or whatever it is. I feel like every time I look it up, it's either 14 or 15 or 13, and I still have no clue. I think it's 14. I don't know, but it's
I think
15
it's
including this
Yeah, I think
the
it's 15,
prequel.
including New Spring. I think it's 14 made books and then the prequel. I think it's 15. That's what
Mm.
I'm saying anyway.
Um, so I mean, I could look it up. I'm literally looking at the Wheel of Time Wikipedia, not Wikipedia, wiki, but whatever. Um,
Whatever.
so yeah, getting to go home to the Two Rivers was really interesting, and I think that seeing all of those characters from the point of view of Perrin, who has grown and changed, and going home again, and I mean, losing his entire family was pretty brutal. I
Yep.
absolutely wasn't expecting that at all. I was thinking he was going to be bringing File home to meet his mum, but she's dead.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Um,
was that was a twist that I didn't expect. And I liked I would say it was interesting, sort of obviously how they died
mm,
wasn't how he thought what had happened. It was just sort of, in a sense, potentially random brutality of Trollocs, but you never know. Trollocs are always guided by somebody generally,
mm,
unless they escape. But yeah, that sort of nothing to do with the White Cloaks, really, in that sense whatsoever, as he suspected.
mm,
And there's something about a character going home and a character sort of almost wanting to sort of sacrifice himself to save others. That sort of heroism is always touching. But as you say, it's not the epilogue of the story. That's what I thought worked so well. Like he's developed and changed so much and grown so much
mm,
in 4 books without being the main character of any of those books.
yeah.
Yet we've seen him grow and develop. And I think also what was interesting in his development is we still had a bit of the wolf dream, but because the wolves weren't about in Emond's Field, it didn't seem to overshadow.
Him as a
Like the
character,
previous books, it
yeah.
was very focused on the wolf element, and that was still there. Obviously, we had elements of the wolf and whatever else, and we had the wolf dream, and we had Slayer
Mm,
within the wolf dream, or Lord Luke, um, and that. So that was interesting, but it didn't feel like it was overpowering. It was more about Perrin, the man that he is becoming or become,
mm,
which I quite enjoyed.
yeah. And I really also liked his interactions with the two Aes Sedai that followed him to the Two Rivers, Verin and Alana. And obviously we know Verin, and she's been around a lot.
Yeah,
But Alana is obviously the Aes Sedai that everyone thinks is a dark friend. So it was really interesting seeing like those two characters, seeing Padan Fane come back again and be working with the White Cloaks now,
yeah,
and be in somehow like endorsed by the like leader of the White Cloaks. which I think that makes that quite clear that he's a dark friend. Pedro
He
Nile, I
was,
think is his name. I couldn't
yeah,
remember.
he's the leader of the White Cliffs. Yeah, but um, I think Fane is interesting because he is he's on his own agenda, or seems to
Mm,
be. He seems to be this own unique entity. He's no longer wrapped up purely with the Dark One. He
mm,
seems to have his own power, his own ambitions, his own agenda that he's following. And he does, yeah, he pops up, as you say, with the White Cloaks, and yeah, he's trying to sort of develop it. But then the local, I've forgotten the White Cloak's name, who's in Emmons Field. It's not
yeah, it's the guy whose
Buyer,
dad,
not Buyer, Bornhold.
yeah,
Bornhold?
Dane Bornhold, I want to
Yeah,
say, whose dad, Perrin, was around
yeah,
when he died but did not kill.
yeah,
But everyone blames Perrin for it.
yeah, exactly. And I think it was interesting him sort of his view on Fane, how Pedro Nard put him there, and he had to sort of do once, but he knows he's a baddie.
Mm,
However, you think about the White Cloaks can still recognise a baddie in that sense. But you know, but what one of the best bits of this whole thing with Perrin and the White Cloaks was the whole end of the battle scene where he was like, so before the Trollocs final sort of fight with the Trollocs, he's like, the White Cloaks is all sort of leaving, so like, well, this is our fight, and he sort of makes a deal with Bornhold that he'll hand himself over if they fight with them and stand up and fight with them to fight off the Trollocs, and they sort of stick around. But
mm,
then, and you know, because Perrin comes across throughout the books as someone, a man of his word, a man of principle, and you think, well, this is terrible, but he'll hand himself over. But then when his battle's over and it's won, and they come to arrest him, he's like, "Where the hell were you?" I
yeah,
said,
it's
"If you
like
fight, you didn't fight."
you didn't
You
keep
know,
your part of the deal.
yeah, exactly. And you're like, "Yeah, go screw yourself."
Mm. Yeah,
But yeah,
I thought
you know,
that
the
was really
women are
good.
fighting, the children are fighting, and parents just like, "No, what the hell are you doing?" Just
Mm,
so good, so good. Yeah, Perrin really, really shone in this. As I say, I didn't dislike him throughout any of the books. I quite enjoyed him in the last book, but this book was definitely his book. And wow,
yeah,
what a storyline he had, and that whole Emmonsfell battle. And I was just so impressed by Jordan's ability to write sort of the battle
agreed.
scene,
Yeah, because he
tension.
hasn't really shown us action
No,
that much before, and
no,
especially not big scale action. He's given us like one-on-one duels,
yeah,
and I would say, in fact, the times he's tried to do bigger action, he has not really nailed it. Like in the Great Hunt with the attack on Farm, I found myself quite confused with what was going on in that.
yeah. Well, I
Dragon
think
Reborn was good, but that was smaller scale.
yeah, I think we've had a few skirmishes, and I think with the farm with the battle, because the main characters weren't part of the battle per se,
Mm,
they were side characters who were sort of caught up within the battle in a sense. And it's not quite like that, but they weren't leading
mm,
the fight then in that sense. As this one, Perrin was clearly the leader and leading the fight, and it was just yeah, he wrote it so well. So how much more sort of big battle, I don't know, but you can see more now that we've got the Aiel
mm.
potentially more involved within that. But yeah, that was superb and a really nice insight into Jordan's ability to write that. So yeah, that was superb.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the marriage as well between him and Fail. I thought that that relationship was going to take longer to blossom, but it feels like they go from, will they, won't they, in the Dragon Reborn to like, well, they're already together at the beginning
Yeah,
of the Shadow Rising, and then it becomes like the they are kind of the crux of the kind of push and pull between men and women in this book, because obviously that's a big theme of the Wheel of Time is that these women have certain power, men have certain power, and when they come together is when the most magical things are done. And like we're looking at the Dragon's Fang and the Flame of
yeah,
Tarvalon and how they're like these, they're obviously the yin and yang symbol,
Yeah.
but there's like the, you know, that apart they're bad, but together they're this, you know, pure thing. And I think that the pulling together of Perrin and Fael is definitely something like that, where they're showing like, oh, when they aren't working together, things are going wrong, and then when they finally kind of pull together and get in line, there is a bit of a hint that like maybe Fael is manipulating him a little bit. Where she's like, well, yeah, you could be the Lord of the Two Rivers, and he's like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be the Lord of the Two Rivers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's definitely a manipulation. But I think that's for me. That's why it worked because, as you say, they are two halves of the same coin, but they
Hmm.
are different. So you've got like they're equals because like Fael is just as strong and powerful in different ways, but strong and powerful
Hmm.
as Perrin is. And what was interesting at the end when Fael is leading the people from wherever it is, Town Ferry or wherever
Yeah.
they've come from, what I found sort of the interesting dynamic is you've got Perrin leading the Emmons Fielders, who's that reluctant leader, doesn't really want to do it, but
Hmm.
actually has stepped up to do it. But Fael is kind of born to be a leader. Like her family comes, we learn that her family is like royalty effectively, or very close to royalty.
Hmm.
And and I think when she brings them in, like she's so proud that they followed her, and like she's leading. There's something about one of her siblings would be so jealous that
Hmm.
she's done it first, and things like that. So she's sort of born and like not overly eager, but is quite willing and wanting to
Hmm.
lead, and she wants Perrin to lead, therefore, but Perrin's much more reluctant. So you've got that again, that yin yang, where they're both powerful and strength, but we've got a different view of how we're going to progress it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, well, before we spend an entire episode talking about just Perrin, um, I I think that it's quite interesting that I think both of us would say. I know you said that you thought it was paced really well, and I also thought it was paced really well. But then I was thinking back to it, and I was like, I still think this book was paced so well, but they spent 30% of this book in the same building. Like they
Yeah,
don't
that
leave the
that's
Stone of Tyr for like 200 odd pages.
yeah. Well, this is when I went back and I was like today I was looking at like the points that I made notes and I was like, wow, I forgot so much happened in the Stone of Tyr before we even
Mm,
left. Like all the bits, like the ending is so good in this book. And I think we've like the previous three books. I think we've all said like the ending seems a little bit rushed. It got better each one, but it always felt a little bit. And this one is the best
nailed
by
it.
by
Yeah.
far. It's so satisfying. And I think because that's so satisfying, I've sort of forgotten how much happened at the beginning. Because you've got so much in the Stone of Two. You've got so much going with Rand. You've got
Mm,
the High Lords. You've got like the bubbling up of thing. You've got Trollocs attacking
yeah.
um, Tyr. There's just so much happening in that beginning. We've got Lanfear. We've got a couple of other Forsaken also throwing Trollocs in it. There's just so much. We've got the Arch. People going to.
Mm.
It's just so much going on at the
I,
beginning of that book. I know we spend a long time there, but it's still packed with
mm,
action
I,
and happenings.
I really liked that we saw the doorway from Matt's point of view. With the because obviously he speaks the old tongue, so he just
Yeah,
went in and was like, "Oh yeah, I was just talking to him," and everyone else is like, "Oh, I didn't
I had no
understand what
idea.
they were saying," and I like that they were all in there at the same time and didn't know,
Yeah,
which I thought
and
was
then basically the whole thing was just collapsing because they're all at two taverns
yeah.
in the same place. Yeah,
I'm like
yeah,
I'm like Mairead's like, promise me you won't go into that thing. No, Egwene's like, promise me you won't go into the door. And then like literally a chapter later, Matt's like, well, I'm going in the door.
yeah. Exactly.
Uh,
And Rand's already there. Moraine's been there. Just
yeah.
everyone's like having a little party in the door.
And
Yeah.
then, I mean, we can skip forward a little bit to talk a little bit
Yeah.
more about doors because Matt also goes into another door, Terangrial, in Ruidian,
Yeah.
uh, which I'm never sure how to pronounce. Uh,
There's
Roy,
so many
Roy.
like
I,
so many words. Roydian. I go for Roydian when I read it. I don't know why.
I think that Michael Kramer said Roy Dean, and I was like,
Roydian.
oh, this seems
Okay.
wrong. Ruidian seems so much cooler. But he also says Moiraine, like Moira, but with an N on
Okay,
the
rather
end,
than
and I
Moraine.
don't like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously, um, I think the thing with the most important thing, obviously, in the stone stuff is like Elaine and Rand kind of getting together a little bit, and then you
Yeah.
have Rand doing his lightning thing to clear all the Trollocs
Mm.
out, which is very cool. And he also tries to revive that girl with the power using Kalendor, and like kind of like she like zombie jerks to her feet and
Yeah.
stuff. And Moraine's like, "You really can't do this. This is not a thing to do." Which I thought was
Yeah.
very interesting. I'm wondering if that's foreshadowing for an actual revival that's going to come through the power sometime in the books.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it could well be. I think also we've got, if we're going to talk about doors, obviously we've got Matt going through the door, but then we've got what happens after that and Rand
Hmm.
reviving him without
Yeah.
the power, which is an interesting sort of um, comparison that we've got. He's left Kalendor at the Stone of Tears, so he hasn't got the all-encompassing power. Obviously, still incredibly powerful, but
Hmm.
he managed to save and resurrect Matt through, well, CPR effectively. But
Hmm.
I
And
forget what
he's
he calls it, whatever Tam taught him called it.
yeah,
But yeah,
the breath of life or something.
yeah.
I expect.
He didn't sing "Staying Alive" when he did it. Staying Alive.
No,
Staying Alive.
but Matt, of course, hanging from the tree of life,
Mm.
which is where the Green Man from the Eye of the World used to live, which is where the Eye of the World is. And I remember them saying that it just kind of appears in um, book one in the Eye of the World, but the actual location it appears that you go to when you step into the garden or whatever is Ruidion.
Okay, I hadn't picked up on that.
Because I remember them saying that Matt was hanging from the Tree of Life, and I was
Yeah,
like, where have I heard Tree of
I've never
Life
saw
from? Where have I heard this from? And looked it up in the Eye of the World and was like, ah.
that.
So
I
interesting.
see.
But I
Yeah,
guess also while we're on Ridian, we should probably talk about, I would say, the big reveal of this book.
yeah. Just what? Well, before we go to the big
Oh
reveal,
yeah,
just back
yeah.
to Matt. Matt and the doors. Matt and the doors. So the second door he goes to, where he goes to these other people, and they're not answering questions, but
Mm.
they're fulfilling wishes
Mm. So it
or
seems
whatever
like
they're doing.
each door does something different.
Yeah, there's a difference, but what was fascinating. I think with both of them, we've got stuff that's foreshadowing future. Like he's going to be married to the daughter of the
Mm.
nine moons, nine suns, whatever. Anyway, and there's some other things that came up with Matt, and now Matt's got this. I can't remember exactly what he asked, the questions he asked, but it was something along the lines of, um, you know, not being influenced by Aes Sedai or being out of their power, and there was something else and something else, and they
Mm.
sort of he got those. Oh, his memories. He wanted his memory filled, and there was something else, and it was interesting how that um, was enabled. Like his memory has sort of been filled by these old world Manetherian, Manetherian
Yeah, he's got like
memories.
generals or something in his
Yeah,
head, hasn't he? Like
yeah.
soldiers.
So it has been filled, but it's not with his
Yeah,
memories. It's not
which
that
is
sort of
definitely
twist.
very
Yeah, and
interesting.
obviously he gets hung from this tree of life, and that goes back to the answer they had in the first war that he has the man who dies and is reborn, or I can't exactly how it's phrased, but or lives twice. The man who lives twice, I think it is something
Mm.
like that. So it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of, and we'll come on to even more world building stuff in a second when we get on to the other bit of Rudian. But I think there's a lot of like foreshadowing stuff within that. It probably has passed me by a little bit, but we'll see what comes out over the next few books. But it's interesting to see sort of, and I think this is why I can understand why people read this more than once because
Mm.
I can really imagine now going back, in a year's time when we finish the series, going back and reading it, go through and go, oh yeah, I know what that's leading to. I know what that's leading to. Oh yeah, that's so.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot there. But
I
yeah,
will.
but yeah,
I will definitely be rereading this. I think, unless it
yeah.
ends with a whimper.
Uh, Oh yes, yeah, that's
But
true. Yeah,
a lot of books that I read, I tend to like get from the library or buy secondhand and then donate or whatever. But I've been buying all the Wheel of Time ones in a matching set to go on my shelf for
yeah,
future rereads. I don't know if I'll be rereading it straight away when I finish, but I definitely will be rereading it. There's I've already been like, I'm definitely going to do this. Um, but the other but yeah, so I guess let's talk about the IEL.
yes. Oh man.
So did you have any theories or guesses that this was going to be the origin of the IEL, that they split off from the Tinkers?
No, no. So I remember in the previous books there was talk about who they're allowed to go through the Isle Waste, like the Isle that they do let the Tinkers
Yeah,
to the what are they called?
Tuatha Arn.
Tuathalan, not to Teviran, Tuathalan,
Mm.
Tuathalan, go through the Isle Waste. So it's sort of like, why did they let them, these, harmless, peace-loving people against this sort of warring groups,
Mm.
just allowing them to walk free through. So that was sort of like, but no connection in my head of, oh, these are originate from the same group, and actually, not only do they originate from the same group, in a sense, they've both separated in a way from their original
Mm.
role that they were given by the Aes Sedai, who are always getting their fingers into every pie and stirring trouble.
I liked. I had like an inkling, so it wasn't a huge surprise when it was revealed because I remembered, like you were saying, that the Thinkers were always allowed to go through the Isle Waste,
Yeah,
and no other people were. I was like, oh, there's something going on there. And then I remembered that neither the Aiel nor the Tinkers will pick up a sword. They're very, and
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was like, so originally I was like, oh no, the Tinkers won't pick up any weapons. But then
yeah,
when they talked explicitly about swords for both, I was like, ah, there's something going on here. Interesting
yeah.
that we
That's
do
true.
get, I mean, a very slight tangent. Interesting that we get that Tinker back from book one, and he does pick up the sword to
Yeah,
defend
uh,
his family.
Aram,
Yeah,
Aram.
Aaron. Yeah, I thought he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
an
No, that was
interesting
interesting.
character. I'd like to
Yeah,
see more of.
yeah. Well, we'll see. I think he's sort of become Perrin's shadow a little bit, so we'll see
Mm,
whether we do get more of him. But yeah, that was interesting to see that. But yeah, no, I didn't foresee that, and I actually quite enjoyed the way it was explained and exposed to us. So it didn't feel like,
definitely.
I mean, in a sense, it was an info dump,
Mm,
um, but it was done in a really interesting and engaging way
yeah.
that you just felt that you were with Rand in that moment in Rhuidean, going through each step and sort of reliving his ancestors' history. And we learned so much about Rand and where he comes from, um, and his ancestry as well. And I think it was we got the contrast of Rand going through it, and I've forgotten the other Aielman who was going through the place at the same time from the other from the Shido. Was it from the
Yeah,
Shido?
from the Shido. I can't remember his name, but
No, who was
he
obviously having
doesn't
that
make it, does
reaction to
he?
it. Yeah, having that reaction to it, and it was really well done, and
Mm,
yeah, I was just blown away. Like this is a fascinating intersection of how time can change how one views one's own
mm,
culture over generations and generations, and how that drift away from where we've got these, the Aiel who are now this sort of well, not warmongering, but there's a level of violence associated with them. They're always dressed in very bland browns, and because that matches the environment in which they live and they hunt
mm,
and they um, exist. And then you've got the Tuathalan who don't. They travel everywhere. They're absolutely peace loving, the way of the leaf,
mm,
and they dress in incredibly garishly bright, contrasting colours.
Mm.
You just see that, but actually they come from the same history. They have the same connected history, and they've both fallen away from that history in a sense.
I also really liked the look at the end of the previous age where they were talking about like jump jets or jump planes or whatever, and I was like, oh, they're talking about airplane. I was like, that's an airplane. They're talking
Yeah,
about an airplane. I was like, oh, that's cool. Because in the Wheel of Time show, there's like a scene where they're traveling somewhere, and they travel through what looks like 1,000-year-old ruin of a city with like destroyed cars and stuff, and
okay.
that's not what you get from that first book at all.
No,
Like none of the surroundings feels like it's like, oh, that is like New York that's been blown up or
yeah,
whatever. Which is what I think in the show they were trying to hint that it's our Earth, but like thousands of years in the future. But for me, this kind of reveal of that it used to be kind of a sci-fi style world was really interesting,
yeah,
and getting to spend like a little bit of a chapter in that POV.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also we've got and we've got hints throughout it of the technological advancement that existed previous. What
Mm.
the Ogiers were doing previously. We had that the white bridge or the bridge that was
It sounded like it was plastic to
plastic. Yeah,
me.
exactly. We've got the tower of the ice, the White Tower.
Mm.
It's sort of a solid white building, and it's just like there's like little hints of technological advancement that has been lost
Mm.
um, through history. So, yeah, absolutely, that was brilliant. And how did you find because that leads um, obviously Rand becomes the
Kara Khan, Chief of
Kara Khan,
Chiefs,
chief of chiefs with his two
dragon
dragon
tattoos.
tattoos. But then we have like the imposter
Mm.
and him having to give the reveal. How did you feel about that? Because that was quite a moment.
I thought that was very, very interesting, and I like that. So, I mean, from what I've read of Fires of Heaven, there's kind of there's still like fallout coming from that, and it's like a lot of the island are like, yeah, we don't really know what to do now, which I thought was really interesting, and I think that one of the things that you get with that is basically there's not as much of um, fallout from that decision. I do like that Rand just makes a lake. He's like, I'm gonna use an Angreal. I'm gonna make a lake, to like show them that I'm the Dragon Reborn. I was like, that's
It's,
good.
yeah, and that worked for me so well because throughout the book he's like the destroyer, that he's destroying everything, and that he's having this internal conflict that he's the destroyer
Mm,
of the Aiel, he's the break of the world. He's going to destroy virtually everything so a bit can survive effectively. And he's heading to his final battle, and the prophecy of the Aiel is that he will sort of unite them and destroy them.
mm,
But then he creates something.
yeah.
He creates this lake, and he sort of foresees how it's going to be green and lush and in the future. So he's not purely a destroyer. He is actually
Mm,
creating as well. And I thought that was a lovely juxtaposition, sort of towards the end, of actually it's not pure destruction. There is some hope and some future.
yeah. I think this book is really quite hopeful in terms of obviously we get a good ending for Perrin and Rand,
Yeah,
and we get and even the girls in Tanchiko, they have that. I mean, to slide over to them slightly, they build that relationship with the Shawn woman,
yeah,
Egyanin, who has discovered that the Shawn women are also um, able to be trapped by the chain, like Egwene did in The Great Hunt.
yeah,
Um, I thought that the chapter that we had with the Sean Chan Queen or whatever was quite interesting because it showed like a very different society to the one that we've seen. But yeah, so I thought the everything ends on quite a strong note in this book. I feel like and
Yeah.
quite a hopeful and like people can change. You know, Perrin accepts that he's a accepts that he's this general lord ruler sort of person.
Yeah.
Accepts Fael into his life, and then Nynaeve is able to beat Moghedien, and we
Oh
get
man, that was epic. I mean, Nynaeve. I mean, I don't know what percentage of the book she is, but she feels big because of that moment. Like the moment where she's fighting out the Forsaken, and she just
3.7%.
is that it. It
Yeah.
feels like it's more, and I think that's because of this moment. And she's just that fight with how did you say it?
Moghedien.
Moghedien. Okay, because I didn't know how. I keep changing it when I read it in the book. Moghedien, and like just the way she uses her anger and the power she generates and how powerful she actually is. That and I like it was amazing, like the tension of like two people just standing there staring at each other, just generating these flows to bind each other, and she's able to dominate. And it's the power she has because up to that point, Rand is the only one that's really faced, fought, and defeated any Forsaken, and now Nynaeve has shown that she has that level of power, and again the lack of control that, in a sense, that Rand has as well. He also is unable to control. But that was such a good moment. I was just like a proper fist pumping moment. She's nailed it. That does put me on to one of my very very minor down points. Is the Forsaken don't feel like a massive threat because they feel a bit too easy to defeat in a sense. And I know we touched on this in the previous one where I feel like it's sometimes a bit too easy. Now, to counter that, I think Lanfear is a fascinating Forsaken because we see more of her, I think, helps. Some of them we just literally see, they turn up and they die.
Yeah.
So they don't really build any threat. And I think Lanfear builds a threat because she's quite conniving and she's obviously got her agendas and she's she's trying to manipulate Rand's trying to sort of manipulate her to get to their own ends, and sort of then you've got Moraine in that mix as well. So that's really sort of interesting sort of battle of wits going on. I think that develops her more as a threat. So I'll be interested to see how it develops. And then we've got Asmodean, who's now like bound to Rand. And I thought his final battle with Rand, where he sort of just cut him off from the Dark One, he cut the puppet strings away from him, so who's now isolated from the Dark One, was brilliant. And just that creates a dynamic where he's got someone who can teach him, and then like Lanfear sort of gave him up on a platter in a sense.
Yeah.
But she's still after her own things. I thought that was so good, and it just that to potentially develops the Forsaken more. Hopefully, we see more of a threat. And I think Lanfear seems to be more of a threat, but we know that there are other Forsaken elsewhere. We know Morghese is in the thrall of a Forsaken.
Yeah.
We know there's one in Ilion. I think there's one someone else as well. So we know there's a few.
Yeah.
About, I can't exactly where they all are now, but we've sort of come across a couple, 2 or 3, I'd say, sort of still about. But yeah, they just don't feel much of a threat when it comes down to that sort of final battle.
I feel like the idea behind the Forsaken in these early books are to be like, these are like the rubbish tier Forsaken, and then there's like a more impressive, like there's a bit in The Shadow Rising, I think, where Lanfear's like, oh yeah, Asmodean was always shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of banter of them, like they're all rubbish. Yeah, that is true. And like you've got and I think that's just like my only minor point. It doesn't take anything away from like Nynaeve defeating, the Forsaken. It didn't take anything away from that. I was still like fist pumping. That was brilliant. That was
Yeah,
epic. Seeing how much power Nynaeve can channel
yeah,
to just like you know push this Forsaken and defeat them was absolutely brilliant. So it didn't take anything away from that. It's just something that you sort of I'm just glad it wasn't the same one of the last three books
yeah,
coming back again. So that was a benefit. But yeah, so I think that was my minor one. I think so. That is the Nynaeve element. Obviously, we've got one big one we haven't talked about, and I just want before we get to that, can we just touch on Elaine and Tom?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's like Elaine's drunk scene, superb.
yeah. Very
Thoroughly
funny.
enjoyed that. She only had one cup of wine. She couldn't understand it. And then like I really like Tom. Tom is great. He's one of my favorites. He's there's so much to him, and he's obviously intelligent. He's obviously knows a lot. We get the bit his sort of battle of wits then with Moraine about who knows more about who,
Hmm.
and they're sort of not very veiled threats of you may know a lot about me, but I know a lot about you. We both got things we can throw at each other. So I thought that was really good. And obviously his relationship with Elaine is fascinating. And I think it's, as she's developing understanding and seeing where her and his history will be developed. And I still think obviously we need sort of that bit with Morghese at some point, Morghese and Tom.
Hmm.
And is is Elaine and Tom just he was the lover of her wife, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah. Is Tom
Yes.
Elaine's dad,
Well,
perchance?
this is the bit that it sort of becomes like because we all knew that he was obviously the lover of Morghese. It was only when it was like in this book, really for me, when they were talking about him playing with Elaine, Elaine sort of sat in his lap, and as a kid, and I was like, oh, okay, it happened that long ago.
Hmm.
So was it how much before her being a kid was this relationship, and who therefore is Elaine's father? Um,
Yeah. I don't know if because Gawain and Galad, I think they
mm,
all look like Morghese and Elaine. So maybe Tom's got some DNA in there.
um,
Definitely something that I thought was going to happen. Although in this book, my big theory about Moraine is revealed to be wrong, isn't it?
it
Because
is.
my theory that she was the queen of
The
and
rightful
or the
queen.
rightful queen who abdicated to join the Aes Sedai. And that is just not the case. She's from
No,
a noble family in Cairn, whose
she's
name I
very
can't even
closely
pronounce.
related. Yeah,
They are
closely related.
very similar kingdoms,
Yeah,
but interesting that she comes from the Game of Thrones town,
yeah,
and she's the kind of master manipulator. But yeah, it's interesting to get that information, like knowing a bit more about Moraine. Um, I guess while we're talking about Aes Sedai, should we talk about the White Tower?
yeah. The one big thing we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the massive. That was the big surprise for me. So
Yeah,
like finding out that the Aiel and the Tinkers were the same, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I was like, that's a cool revelation, but it wasn't like a shock. I
yeah,
was like, ah, I've put the now I know the information, I can put the clues together.
yeah. That all makes sense. Yeah,
But the White Tower, like rebellion, and then like you just come to the story and like Suan and Leanne have already been stilled. Like it's not like you get to see it happen or like you see the big fight or anything. You just get to them and they're done. Um, and like they're relying on Min and Logain, uh, and Gawain, I think, who's trying to help. I can never get Gawain or Galad the right way around. I don't know which one's
yeah.
which. I think Gawain is. Elaine's twin brother or brother of some kind,
Yeah,
and Galad
yeah, and
is like a
Galad's the older
step
one.
brother or something.
Yeah, and he's slightly
Previous
older.
dad.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, this is Robert Jordan's naming convention, isn't it? Let's put them really closely named together so confuse
yeah,
everybody even more.
it's
Uh,
just
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, so,
Elaine, Elida, Egwene, and of course
yeah.
Elida, who was Morghase's advisor at court, is the new Amelin.
Mm,
And that was a very interesting change because I had never, because obviously Elida was a red, but I was like, oh, Elida's going to be the example of like the good red, because you can't just have like this entire um, arm of the whatever they're called,
yeah,
Arja. And like you can't be like this entire Arja is rubbish. Like they're bad. We don't like
they're all
them.
baddies, yeah.
But no, it turns out actually that they all suck in a certain way.
Yeah, they do, but but the interest, so is she just Red Arja?
Mm,
Because that's still very much, or is she Black Arja? And we still don't
yeah,
know. And like, oh, that, like, okay, so the White Tower coup d'etat was brilliant because it was completely out of the blue.
yeah.
And it was completely out of the blue because we never saw those point of views. We saw
Mm,
it really from Min's point of view and a bit from Swan's
mm,
point of view, and therefore they had no inkling it was happening. Min is not really involved in the politics of the White Tower. She's
mm,
just there because she was sent there to send a message, but she obviously sees her images. So we got like when she first turned up the White Tower, we saw all this violence of happening to all the people on the same day, but we don't know when it's going to happen or why it's happening or what's caused it. But she's seen all this violence happening, and obviously she saw Loghain in glory at some point in the future as well. So we got that. So she's seen all these images, then suddenly just this coup d'etat happens, and as you say, like Swan and Leanne are just stilled. It's done. Like there is no dramatics. The dramatic element of it is that it's already happened, and there's nothing they can do about it. And
mm.
it was just such a bolt out of the blue. I think I read the paragraph like twice, just going, "What?"
I was very surprised.
But yeah, now we've got Elida in charge, and um, I don't. I still can't. I just don't know because I don't think we know is whether she's just ambitious and obviously she's red. So men who channel are obviously bad,
Mm,
and they're very sort of fervent in that belief. And the way Swan and Moraine have sort of manipulated them all to enable Rand to continue to exist when he was there in the White Tower at one point. I can
mm,
certainly understand her fighting against that just because she's red rather than just being a black, a dark friend. But then, is she also a dark friend?
yeah,
Is there that sort of because we know there's still dark friends within the tower, but who they are, we don't know. So we shall wait and see. But yeah, and then we've got just this distilling of that, and now then suddenly just ordinary people trying to find a reason to keep living,
mm,
and basically Swan's revenge uh, is her reason that she's given herself, and Min's obviously out with them, and now with Loghain. So where does that lead? Uh, who knows? But yeah, that was the real, as you said, the real bolt out of the blue, and it was brilliant.
yeah.
Just
It's such a good twist. Because I was expecting, like, obviously we have seen through Min's foretellings or whatever that there was going to be some shit going down at the
yeah,
tower, but I did not think it was going to be in this book. I thought we were like 2 books away from this thing happening. But no, definitely, yeah, mad. Um, and like, yeah, Min and seeing the thing from Loghain again with the like halo around his head, and like, because I had always my theory for Loghain was that he was going to be teaching Rand, and that was how he was going to
mm,
get, he was going to join the Team Dragon, But it seems like no, he's actually going to be involved with Suan and Leanne and Min, and like they're going off to try and recruit, Aes Sedai who aren't on Elida's team, to try and kind of get revenge and work to protect Rand, which is genuinely really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, and them being still and like the way that because you get some like POV from Swan, don't you? And like the
yeah,
way that she's thinking about it is really interesting, and like the relationship she has with Leanne is really interesting, and like now also that they're both stilled, like how their relationship has changed, like she's not in charge anymore. Um, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing more from those characters. There's a few characters that I'm like, oh, if they don't come back up, they don't come back up. But also, where's Huron? It's been like 3 books, and Huron's not been in it again. He was
yeah.
in so
Huron has
much of
gone.
The Great Hunt.
I know.
He's in like a
Yeah,
third of that book.
I'm sure he'll come back. Maybe. This is the thing. There's so many characters, but actually, and one of the things is like obviously Jordan uses repetition when he introduces characters, which I
Mm,
understand because there are so many characters. But actually, there's so many characters that I'm interested in. So
mm,
many, and that is quite incredible. That there's so many that I'm interested to see where they go. And I think even like what are effectively main characters like Logain. I'm really curious about what is his like. Why is he bathing in glory? Because he's stilled,
yeah,
so he can't channel anymore. So what purpose does he give? Like how does his storyline develop to fulfill Min's vision? And we know Min's vision will be fulfilled because it always is. Like there isn't any way to wheedle your way around the way the wheel weaves and the pattern is laid. So it will be. But I'm really curious about how that happens. And then we've got Bail Domon we haven't talked about, who's turned up in this book again, and now they've given him the male Adam to go and throw in the deepest ocean. My
mm,
money says that doesn't happen, and that's definitely going to be around for a while. Um,
yeah. I definitely want to see that crop back up. Um, but I don't want it to crop back up because something bad's happened to Bail Domon because I can't. I like Bail Domon too much. He's too good. I think he's got like a Somerset accent,
oh yeah, it's definitely West Country.
and I
Well, that's
can't.
the way when I read it, that's the way I picture it. Definitely Somerset.
That representation, I can't let it go. I think he's played by Ray Stevenson in the show. I could be wrong.
Oh, I've no idea.
He's played by somebody who is actually like way more famous than I think. Um, oh no, it's no one. No one I know. No one I know the name of. Julian Lewis Jones. He's
Oh, okay.
Welsh though. He is Welsh.
It's not quite Somerset, is it?
Hmm. Oh, he's
Just across the
in.
river.
Oh, he was in House of the Dragon. So he's obviously got a slightly better agent now.
So, okay. So is there anything major we haven't covered off?
I
I
don't
think that's all
think
the major
so.
bits.
Yeah, I think we've covered all the major moves and character things. I do enjoy that we're seeing a lot of things coming in threes. So like the three arches in the test to become Aes Sedai, the
Yeah,
three gateways, the um, thingy gates, the Terrangrial gates that Matt's gone through, the fact that three people enter Rudian at the same time, Avienda, Rand, and Moraine. Yeah, lots of threes going on.
yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, there is a yeah. I mean, there are a lot of threes. I mean, you look at the way the company is sort of put together. You've got the three men, Matt, Rand, Perrin. You've got the three women, Egwene, Nynaeve, Elaine.
mm.
Absolutely, three is certainly a common denominator throughout.
And the groups tend to be interest. I think the groups, the way they're set up this time round, are very interesting. So, like Loyal, Perrin, and Fael.
We haven't spoken about Loyal. Oh,
No, he doesn't have much to do in this book
he doesn't.
apart from a couple of very standout moments.
Yeah,
So, like closing the ways with um, not Verin, or Alana's warder, one of the two.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Didn't even know that Verin had a warder, which is quite funny.
But she's
Um,
brown. She probably forgets sometimes as well.
I would imagine, yeah, she just forgot she had one.
Engrossed in something else.
Because she
We don't know
doesn't.
what her game is either.
No, there's
Like,
something going on with Verin as well, isn't there? She's definitely
'cause she
like,
gave Egwene the ring, didn't he? The dream
she gave her
world
the dream ring.
ring.
So feels like she's on Team Dragon. Because obviously she also is the first Aes Sedai who isn't Moraine and Suan
Yeah.
to find out about Rand.
Yeah.
And she's not exposed him before he went live, as it were. But yeah, so I think I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I don't know how much we haven't covered off that much, but yeah, the pair of the groupings I've really enjoyed. So I
Mm.
really enjoyed seeing um, Elaine and Nynaeve together without Egwene to kind of balance them out.
Yeah.
It's like Egwene's like the middle ground between the hot-headedness of Nynaeve and the like usefulness of Elaine and practicality.
Yeah, and that was the difference because like when the three of them are together, like Egwene and Nynaeve are just loggerheads
Mm,
all the time. And Elaine's like the peacemaker between the two. And like now that we've taken out Egwene out of the equation, pretty much, actually Elaine and Nynaeve can have a bit of loggerheads together.
yeah,
Because Nynaeve, like though she has that epic moment in this book, she still has no sort of
she's got no
ability to work
chill.
with people. Yeah. she's just she's
She's
just a bit
not
of
a
a
team
bully.
player.
So, but yeah, I mean, I do, and the thing about this book that he does so well, and is that we have the separate groups and they stay
Mm,
separate and they have their
yes.
own climactic conclusion, and that they get room to breathe in their own space doing their own thing. As we haven't
Mm,
had that previously, we've had this sort of everyone get to this point generally by some sort of magical means, and then we'll have this final battle,
mm,
or Rand will have this final battle, and you'll be bit part players within it, as they
yeah.
all have their, not all of them, but we have several key moments for different characters which are not directly related to Rand in a sense. Obviously, all
Mm,
links, but they're their own separate bits, and it works so well. And it just makes me so eager to carry on and read the other ones.
yeah.
So I know I mentioned at the beginning, and I'll just want to touch on. There was just a couple of really minor things. So I spoke
Oh
about the
yeah, yeah.
Forsaken. So let's just have a couple of negatives. Spoke about the Forsaken. They're not great baddies, or not terrifying baddies.
Yeah.
Um, one thing is nothing to do with Robert Jordan whatsoever. It's to do with whoever the typesetter is who wrote the books, because like this is a much bigger book than the other books, but it
Yeah.
doesn't look that much bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, but it is massively bigger, and the reason is because let's get on with that chapter. Like this is the print and the margins, decent margins, few lines,
Yeah.
and then in this book, from just a pure reading, they have absolutely
They
rammed
annihilated
in.
those margins.
Like there are no margins. There's like twice as many lines on the page. The words are smaller, and I was just like getting into that to start reading it. I was like, this is a little bit painful. Which again,
The
nothing to do with the story whatsoever. But from a pure reading enjoyment point of view, it was a bit painful from the others.
My
Uh,
paperback copy of The Shadow Rising, the pages are like Bible thin. They're so thin. And it's the same size as all the other paperbacks. And
yeah,
I think that Either World might be the biggest paperback that I have
it's
of all of
just
them.
yeah. I know it doesn't take away from the brilliance of the story, but it's just from a pure reading enjoyment point of view. I was like, this is
It is
like
very funny,
first
isn't
few
it?
chapters. Like this is because it also takes forever to finish a page. Therefore, I
Mm,
was not turning any pages. I'm like, oh my god, I've been reading for like 10 minutes. I've not turned a page yet.
you feel like
Um,
you haven't made much progress.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then the other two bits, again, incredibly minor, but I am a pedant, so I'm going to bring them up.
Go for
One
it.
is there's no prologue.
I thought that was weird.
That was weird. Like, why have we suddenly not got a prologue in this book? And yet, the first chapter,
Mm.
there was parts of it that felt like prologue-y,
Yeah, exactly.
but it wasn't separated into prologue, which I didn't understand. Again, incredibly minor, doesn't make any difference to the story. And the second one is it's a much bigger book. The chapters are much longer,
Mm.
and the way he's written them is different from the others. So the previous books were very much one chapter, one point of view, with a
Mm.
few very minor infractions on that. There was like the odd bit where we had, so in the Dragon Reborn, there was a couple where we had one point of view, and then we'd have like 2 pages of Rand
Mm.
at the end of it. But other than that, it was generally one short chapter, one point of view, and occasionally a point of view spread over a couple of chapters. But it was very, but in this one, especially the first few chapters, are quite long chapters, but there's several points of view in the chapter.
Mm.
And that just took me a little while to get my head around. It doesn't spoil the story, but it's just a different formatting, a different style of writing. It just took me a little minute to go, oh, okay, so we're changing the structure that we've had in the previous books, in these books. Again, incredible pedantry going on here, but
Yeah.
it just changed the way sometimes, it's like part of the reading, and because I'm reading these physically, probably it wouldn't have impacted if I was listening to it, maybe, but it just feels a bit different. And it did take me a little bit longer to get into the book, I think, than the others, just because pages were a bit more painful to look at, and each chapter was a bit more broken to start with. But once you get into it, the story is superb, and none of that takes away from how great this book is.
Mm.
I like to have my little whinge because that's who I am.
I think the thing that I really liked about this, I do actually like multi POV in chapters. Sanderson does this a lot, and I wonder
Okay,
if he got it from um, Jordan, because obviously he's a big fan of Robert Jordan,
yeah,
and I feel like you can see a lot of influence. As I read more of this, I'm like, oh, I can see a lot of influence in the Stormlight archive from Wheel of Time, for example. Um, but yeah, I do like a multi-POV chapter because it makes me feel like there's more going on. There's like loads of
mm.
things happening. But yeah, I think that was a positive for me.
I think it
But
was just a change. I think it was just the
mm,
fact that we
the
changed
chapters are too long
this
though.
book.
Dragon
Yeah, the
Reborn
chapter
had lovely short chapters, and we've just gone straight back to like 30, 50 page chapters.
yeah,
Apparently,
of absolutely crammed text.
one of the chapters in the book is in one of the books is 200 pages, apparently. And one of the
Okay,
prologues in one of the later books is 10% of the book, which I think is hilarious.
that's because you got to catch up for the one he missed in this one.
Yeah.
But yeah. So okay, so have you got any theories going forward of where we're going next?
Well, most of my theories have been, most of my like out there theories have been proven incorrect. That
So okay,
Logain
so
was going to teach Rand and that Moraine was Morghase's older sister.
yeah,
I think that
yeah.
Suan Sanch, and now bear with me on this theory, I think that at some point she may have grown up in a fishing family.
I don't know where you got that idea from.
These incredibly
Absolutely
subtle
no idea.
hints. They're very subtle. But if you pay attention to her dialogue,
Uh,
there's a line, and this is an extremely minor spoiler for Vice Versa. There's a line where someone goes, "Could you stop talking about fishing metaphors?" And I
it's
laughed
the
out
only way
loud.
she can talk.
Yeah,
Oh man, yeah, she is. But okay, that's good. It's nice to see that he's got the ability to see a sense of humor. I'm doing a lot of fishing metaphors. I tend to
yeah.
make it out myself in writing this. But yeah, but I think the only thing for me is like I don't understand how Logain factors into the future of this.
Mm,
Um, I think obviously, I think the Tom Elaine is Tom her real dad
yeah.
question. That's interesting to know. Have I got any other big theories? I don't know. I don't know where we're going now. I think what have we got? We've got the Tanchico stuff. We know the Black Archer are still there, but they've sort of escaped. So obviously there's going to be more chasing of them. Be interesting to see what the Forsaken do because we've got some have now sort of establish themselves in different places, and Lanthea's obviously trying to pull Rand's strings. So we'll see what develops,
Mm.
and that how Asmodean teaches Rand and what we learn about the One Power,
Yeah.
how that develops. Um, but yeah, I don't know how Perrin's storyline goes from here now.
Mm. Does he, go and see Morghese and join her court? Because that's what Fael
Yeah,
seemed to be trying to,
bring her back into the fold of
and then
yeah,
maybe get
Mongol.
rid of the Forsaken that's preying on Morghese. That feels like that's.
That feels possible.
I
Yeah.
feel like he's the Forsaken that is lined up to be the villain of the next book.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is not based on the book because I'm not far enough in to say so. But that feels like to me, because like I said, I'm not even 200 pages in, I don't think. But he feels like to me from the end of Shadow Rising to be the next obvious target, because
Yeah.
obviously he's got connections to multiple characters because he's connected to Rand by being Forsaken. He's connected to Elaine by being, abusing her mother, and he's connected to Perrin because they're in the same kingdom, whereas no one else is like nearby.
Yeah. That's a
Um,
good point. And I think also like it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Morghese,
mm,
with what's happened in the White Tower, and what Galad and Gawain are feeding back to Morghese about
yeah,
where the hell Elaine is now that Swan can't give the story that she's off on a farm somewhere.
yeah,
So whether that creates something that happens along those lines, um, yeah, interesting. I think also that we've got the manipulations of what Rand now does with the Aiel.
yeah,
I assume there's going to be some sort of civil war esque thing because we've got a small portion, but a portion of them that have broken away
yeah.
from the original lot. So whether there's going to be some battle. And we didn't
And
touch on it, but how did the other guy fake the tattoos on his forearms?
I think he's just got a tattoo.
Did he?
I
He's
think
got
in
marked
my
up.
mind he just got tattooed,
It was just interesting. I was
painted
just
on.
curious. How did he get them? How did he get them both
I think
on
the other
without
thing
going?
as well was, yeah, I think there's also some Aiel clans who didn't make it in time because they had to leave
Oh
early.
yeah, they left early because the Shidos took the
So, so I
jump
think there's
march.
quite a few clans that aren't under the Dragon
Mm,
banner, and Rand's kind of got to convince them. Still really want to see more from Moraine and Lan. I know uh, Moraine got something from Rudian which was different to Matt and Avienda and Rand, and also what did Avienda get from Rudian.
yeah,
Yeah, I think there's lots of interesting stuff to be revealed and to come up. Um, and having read, a couple of hundred pages of The Fires of Heaven, there is some interesting stuff going on, which isn't actually directly kind of continuing the stuff that I was like, oh, I want to see what's happening next with X, Y, Z. We're kind of in a different space again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you about that one. Although
yeah.
I'm not,
Well,
again,
I
not
will
very
be on
far
it.
in, but
No, well, I'll be on it. Let's have a look. Yeah, this one's a little bit better on the margins.
hmm,
Still pretty chunky, isn't it? So,
I
but
think
yeah,
it's
I will be in
800
that
and
one.
something pages, whereas the Shadow
Yeah,
Rising's over 1,000.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm looking. I mean, I just can't explain. Like, as I say, for my first book where I was just like,
Hmm.
I'm a bit concerned about all the fuss and the hype. To finishing this book and just going, God, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
This is so good. Like there were so many satisfying elements to it. I
Hmm.
just hope, just hope it continues. I know people, talk about the slog coming up, what from book 6, 7. So we're on to book 5 now. So we're heading that way, which is a concern. But I don't know what that
Hmm.
means slog wise. But we'll see. After book 4 was wow.
Yeah, I think I've seen everyone seems to be saying the slog is starting in different places. I
Yeah.
think that the definitive slog is books 8 and 9.
Okay.
I think everyone mostly agrees those are in the slog. But I had someone say that they thought book 5 was the slog, and I was like, and someone said that book 4 was, and then
Well, if book four's the slog, I'm in for a wild ride because
yeah, I mean Darko from Kindles and Kicks, he said that book 5 was his favourite, and a few
okay,
people have said book 6 is their favourite.
okay,
So I think that
mm,
up until book 6, we're still in the sweet spot.
good.
And then we have 7, 8, and 9, which are divisive, and then
Yeah,
Sanderson comes in at 10, I think, or
yeah.
maybe 10 is the last Jordan one. No, I think 10 is the last Jordan one,
Mm,
and then it's 11, 12, 13 are Sanderson books. I'm quickly googling it.
yeah.
Final three were Sanderson, 14 volumes.
So 12, 13, 14.
Yes, yeah, so 12, 13, 14 is Sanderson. So I think that
Okay,
I have heard that the last few Jordan ones were a bit of a slog.
okay. And
Um,
when does the prequel fit in? Because I know we're doing publishing order.
yeah, that came out in 2004, so it was the year after Crossroads of Twilight, which is book 10. So we would
Oh,
read it
okay. So
after
it's
book
all the
10.
way,
So we're
way
quite
off.
far away.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. That's fine.
Apparently, it's quite short. It's only like,
Everything's relative.
yeah. Well, apparently, it's like 300 pages, like very
Oh,
short.
okay.
Yeah,
So like
304
normal book
pages.
size.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like a regular book. Whereas, for example, Crossroads of Twilight, the print edition was 847 pages. So, much to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. But I'm just so excited, Sam. Like, I just can't get over how good this last book was, and I just hope it continues.
Yeah.
Because
I'm really enjoying the Fires of Heaven as well. And every time I sit
okay,
down to read it, I'm like, this is great.
yeah. Well, I will be on it, so hopefully in a few weeks we can have
Mm.
another chat
I've
and
seen a
get through
mild
book five.
spoiler for the Fires of Heaven, which I will not tell you, but I'll tell you
Okay,
when we get to the episode.
okay.
Uh, it's basically concerning a person who is not in this book, and that I was surprised.
Ah,
Um,
right. Okay.
but yeah, cool. Let's
Fair
wrap this
enough.
episode up. Let's move on with our lives and get back to reading.
Exactly. I've got to start the fire of heaven.
Yeah. So Matt is taking a weeny booktube break while he reads more books.
Yeah,
But you
exactly.
sh-
Life gets in the way, Sam.
well, life must find a way. No, wait, life finds a way. That's it. Damn
Yeah.
it.
It's just the
Um,
pattern. The pattern weaves how the
yeah.
pattern weaves, isn't it?
So, but make sure you subscribe to Matt's channel so that you can see his triumphant return when he comes back. Uh, Even if it's just him posting loads of videos about Wheel of Time, which I would do in his situation.
It could well
Um,
be.
and if you have read The Shadow Rising, please drop a comment down below and let us know what you thought of it. Matt and I will answer comments down below, and we will have a chat with you guys. And please remember no future spoilers because we are still reading the Fires of Heaven. I was about to say the fire is rising, but that's a quote from The Dark Knight
Fire is
Rises.
rising. The remix.
Yeah. And make sure you subscribe to my channel as well. I'm recording this over a week in advance, I think, of when it's posting. But coming up, you will see my Fires of Heaven review very shortly after this, and also TBRs and SPFBO stuff. So if you're interested in
Nice.
self-published fantasy, I've joined Philip Chase's team to judge SPFBO. So if you're interested in seeing how that process works, I will be taking you guys behind the scenes and we'll chat all about it. So as I said, please keep subscribed, please watch the channel. Every little subscription helps as we work our way up to that 1,000 finally YouTube will pay me money for my work barrier. Okay, I'm going to close this one out. Goodbye everyone, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.
Bye.